Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our public documentation today on CBS. Now let's go to my colleagues, John Trell and Alex. Take it away.
We start off today with this question. What was the anti-Vietnam War movement? Well, this was the protest of the Vietnam War involvement with the United States.
These protests began as early as 1964, and most of the protesters were students. Their goals were to increase troop withdrawal in the war and decrease the involvement.
According to statistics of 1970, the majority of Americans thought the Vietnam War was a mistake to be involved in.
These protests sometimes turned violent, but were mostly nonviolent and less provocative.
But only some were provocative enough to get the government's attention, but these were the ones that were violent. These violent protests were started when the police thought it was getting out of hand.
The police made many arrests during all the years of protesting, for good reason too. If you let a crowd of people get out of hand, someone might get killed.
This is what happened at Kent State College. Some of the students who were shot had been protesting against the Cambodian campaign, which President Richard Nixon announced during a television address on April 30th. Other students who were shot had been walking nearby and or observing the protests from a distance. 4 students died in total.
These protests were executed by marching to the Capitol in large numbers with creative protest signs.
Over 2 million people protested the war.
Many places in the United States were involved in the protest.
Some Americans responded positively to the protests, thought they were done right. These people were called the Doves.
Doves were the people that opposed the involvement in the Vietnam War.
The government had the Dove political party, and these people were opposed to the war in all ways. Some Doves did not support the protest because they can turn violent.
Troops felt that they weren't being supported, and thus they felt like they were fighting for anything but themselves.
This decreased troop morale.
The students mostly supported the protests and were also participating in most of them. They felt that the draft wasn't fair and didn't want involvement because deaths were happening. The Hawk political party opposed the riots because they felt the public was wronging them and making the Hawks look bad. The Hawks wanted full involvement in this war and wanted to end it quickly.
Troops didn't like the American public protesting because it showed the enemy that things were not going well at home.
Overall, the Hawks, the troops did not support these protests and did not need the second problem at home when they were away.
There were also accomplishments in this protesting. All these protests made troop withdrawal grow up in 1969 from 550,000 to about 480,000, which was a huge success in the protesters' eyes.
The government was affected by the convincing protest and finally realized the war was at an unwinnable stalemate, so the government made better decisions throughout the ending years of the war.
There were downfalls in these protests also.
The only downfalls of the war were 4 students dying at Kent State shooting and all the losses of troops overseas.
These deaths affected the families of the 4 students of the Kent State shooting very negatively because they would never be able to see each other again.
Police brutality was also a large factor on the protest movement. Many people were hurt and or arrested by the police.
Thank you for joining our short program tonight.